All right, so we're going to continue on. This is chapter 1, and now we're in part 2 of Introduction and Research Methods. Right now, what I want to speak about is what we call pseudopsychology. Pseudopsychology is based on common folk beliefs, folk wisdom, or even type of superstitions, which are generally formed from unsupported information and do not follow the basics of empirical testing or research. On the slide, you see we have Amazing Randy, the Amazing Randy. This is a real person, basically, and he's a magician named James Randi, and he's kind of dedicated his life to educating the public about fraudulent pseudopsychologists. Along with the prestigious MacArthur Foundation, Randi has offered $1 million to anyone who proves a genuine psychic power under proper observation or the proper observing conditions. However, after many years, the money has never been collected. So if you would like more information, you can visit Randy's website, which will be www.randy.org. Okay. Uh, and if you can prove it, guess what? You would win $1 million. All right. So enough on pseudopsychology. Let's move on. Okay. So in psychology, we have 4 goals. Okay, but before I go over the 4 goals, do anyone remember on the first slide of part 1 what the definition of psychology was? Hmm. Well, just to refresh your memory, because I want to reinforce it and plug it in because I guarantee you it will be a test question. It's the scientific study of behavior and mental processes. Okay, the scientific study of behavior and mental processes. So now I'm going to move on. Within psychology, there are 4 goals that we try to ascribe to in order to maintain that scientific study and be able to do appropriate types of research. The first one being describe. Okay, basically describing is going to be able to allow us to tell what is the nature of the behavior or the mental process that we're looking at. The example being given here, boys are more aggressive than girls. What would be the behavior here? The aggressiveness, okay? After we describe a particular behavior or mental process, then we go on to attempt to explain the why. Why does this behavior or mental process occur in the first place? So basically what we're doing in research is we're looking at different types of causes and explanations on why, for the example of aggression, it may occur. We might look at variables that would include culture, learning, our genetic backgrounds. Was there any traumatic brain injuries? Or if there has been high levels of testosterone. These are different variables that we'll look at, and we'll talk more about variables and what they are later on in the chapter. However, the first is described, the second is going to be explained. So the third one now in what we do in psychology is that we will attempt to predict when will it happen, okay, or when will it occur. Here we're uh, looking at the studies and collecting data, we are hoping to be able to say when a particular behavior is going to happen. Okay, so that's the main thing in prediction. Okay, when will it happen? And hopefully through your studies or research, you'll be able to show that type of prediction. Okay, so the fourth and final goal that we'll hopefully have is change. Here, how can we change the behavioral mental process? Our goal in psychology, those 4 goals, all lead up to this last goal, basically. We're hoping to be able to describe, figure out what a particular behavior is, explain why the particular behavior would occur, be able to predict when that particular behavior may happen in order for us to be able to change the particular behavior. Okay? So we'll move forward. Now, this is going to be part of your assignment, and pretty much what I will want you to do within the assignment is look at each of the goals, okay? Each of the goals, remember them, get to know them well, and then come back and read this slide, which I'll have the slide up by itself within the assignment so you'll be able to see the slide again to answer the questions. And the question I want you to be able to tell me is which goal is represented in each scenario, okay? I won't read this and go over through it because this is going to be part of your assignment, and hopefully you'll be able to see it clearly. Just to let you know, in terms of the exams, questions are going to be formulated in this similar fashion to you. You might get scenarios or more type of questions that's going to see that you are able to apply the information that you've learned rather than just know the definition. So this is a great way to start practicing that. Now, psychologists, we can wear many different hats. One example is, although I am a professor, a visiting professor, I'm by trade a clinical psychologist. And with my degree, I'm able to do assessments, be able to do therapy, I'm able to do consultations. The list can go on. This is a sample of the different type of careers that we can possess within the field of psychology. When we're talking about biopsychology or neuroscience, here we're looking at the relationship in biology and behavior as well as mental processes. We're going to look at how physical and chemical process may affect the structure as well as how our brains react towards different things, as well as our nervous systems. This is where we're specifically looking at the brain, how the brain communicates with the rest of the body, how we interact with the environment, and so forth. Okay. As I mentioned, as a clinical psychology would be next on that list. We work with evaluations, diagnosis, as well as treatment of different psychological disorders. Okay. I'm going to jump down. Again, there will be PowerPoint slides for you to be able to review. I just want to touch upon a couple of those that are well known and some that's not as well known, but there are many. Okay, so things that most people hear about is what we call counseling psychology. It kind of have an overlap with clinical psychology. However, we with counseling psychology, there might be more focus on the educational component, career adjustments, as well as they might do more social type of interacting in counseling. Okay, cross-cultural psychology is where we're doing comparisons and looking at various cultures and how they may interact with each other, or what are the differences between those. Okay. When we talk about experimental psychology, this is where the individuals, they are strictly like doing research. They're going to be looking at areas like learning, looking at emotion, motivation, perception, sensation and perception, things we'll talk about in the future, of course. But again, these are specific areas that they may do research in. Of course, continuing on, I may have some criminal justice majors taking a course today. I mean, this semester, and forensic psychology may be something that you might be interested in. Here is going to be taking the principles of psychology and putting it with the legal system. Okay, it can include how we would select jurors. Um, when a person is on defense and they have their attorneys and the prosecution, a lot of times they'll refer back to a psychologist to kind of help them figure out. Hopefully you've heard of the term profiling. Well, that's one way of profiling. Profiling who may be a criminal or not. But with jury selection, we might look at the different behavioral patterns, how body language, seeing how they react to a different questioning, and be able to give input to the attorneys involved on whether or not they would want that particular person sitting on a jury. Okay. We also have health psychology. Again, that's going a little bit on lines with the bio psychology I mentioned earlier, but it's a lot to do again with health and illness and looking specifically at those areas. Sports psychology, if I have athletes in the house, this is a particular area where we're looking at more of the performance of an athlete and how we can help the athlete to improve. Although I will say a lot more in recent times and events, they're also being assisted through sports psychology on how to help athletes transition within pro sports as well as when they're retiring and leaving pro sports. You may also see that some of the sports psychologists are working more clinically in terms of having to help some athletes work through their mental health issues as well. So that's just a few of the samples. Please do take time to read through each and every one of these, as there might be a question. And again, these slides will be online for you in Canvas for you to review at any time. All right, so right now, because I'm at that 12, 13-minute mark, so I'm gonna just stop really right here because we're gonna now get into talking about the different origins and the historical references of psychology. And that's gonna take a little time for me to discuss. So rather than try to squeeze it in, I'm gonna stop here at end this for part 2 of our lecture, and we'll be back with the next part, which is part 3.